I woke up with my body carved from stone, yet lying in the prince's arms while he suffered for me. Chapter 16. I awoke, my body feeling as if it were carved from stone, submerged in tepid water. My skin was clammy, fingertips wrinkled from prolonged exposure, but I found solace in Lucas' arms encircling me, his skin pressed against mine. The contrast between our cultures was stark, even in this intimate moment. Luca must have been terribly uncomfortable in his sodden slacks, yet he remained, honoring his word. He had promised not to open his eyes or hold me without permission, and true to his respectful nature, he kept that vow. However, his adherence to his promise didn't erase my lingering resentment. It would be a considerable time before my lips met his again. My determination to hold this grudge as strong as my resolve to navigate the intricacies of castle life. With careful movements, I extricated myself from his embrace and stepped out of the bathtub. A severe chill rattled my bones, compounded by the robust take permeating my muscles. This was far from ideal for walking, but I needed to reach the infirmary. My fractured wrist would take about 5 days to heal without proper care, and I couldn't afford that delay if I wanted to execute my plan to kidnap the witch and attend Luca's birthday celebration. I chuckled to myself, the sound echoing in the opulent bathroom. Luca's birthday. My focus had shifted to postponing his wedding to the Princess of the West, a testament to my strategic mind. I hadn't even considered what gift to present him. Perhaps something from my homeland. A bird? A bear's carcass. Those were popular where I came from. Maybe even jaguar meat. I was certain I wouldn't conform to the castle's traditions of jewels or flowers. As king, Luca could command every merchant in the market to provide him with hundreds of such trinkets. What he called in torture, however, was a mother bear slain by my own hand. The thought amused me, a reminder of the cultural chasm between us. I snorted, wrapping a silk robe around my body as I prepared to leave the bathroom and enter Laura and 𝐊𝐬𝐬's master bedroom. The irony of being in 𝐊𝐬𝐬's room was lost on me. That northern brute, as I often thought of him, despised me with a passion I wholeheartedly reciprocated. Yet here I was, surrounded by his most treasured possessions. The urge to sabotage him in some way was strong, but I resisted for 𝐊𝐬𝐬's sake alone. That kind soul deserved the world for allowing me to rest in her chambers during my heat. If postponing my plans to toy with the brute's mind was the price, I would gladly pay it, my sense of loyalty overriding my mischievous impulses. Sadly, I found a notepad laid on one of the bedside tables with a pencil beside it. I figured it was 𝐊𝐬𝐬's notepad because the handwriting was feminine and in cursive. Written on the notepad was a to-do list that looked like 𝐿𝐷𝐷𝐿𝐬 prepare 𝐊𝐬𝐬's dress. Train with 𝐂𝐿𝐬𝐬 pregnant. I stumbled backwards, shock overcoming my body at the complete invasion of privacy I had just participated in. 𝐊𝐬𝐬 was pregnant and I had no business knowing, but... And now, when she approached me, I knew for a fact that I would not be able to resist the urge to stop myself from staring at her belly at the life she carried inside her. Right next to the notepad was a pencil and I grabbed it without hesitation. Sorry I saw this, but I'm going to grab a few items of clothing from your wardrobe and leave. I stared at my message, unsatisfied with it before adding a small congrats at the end. Would that be enough? I didn't know. Honestly, but I guessed it would do. The sun peeked out of the curtains of 𝐊𝐬𝐬's master bedroom and I sighed, content regardless of the beating pain on my wrist. The sun was up and I had 𝐊𝐬𝐬's entire closet to myself before she found out I'd stolen an entire outfit of hers. I took a deep breath, preparing myself, and pulled her closet open. The dresses in her closet didn't catch my attention. Rather, it was a velvet, burgundy blazer paired with a skirt of the same style. Immediately, I wanted to put it on, so I did. I gently slid the outfit out of the closet and shut it closed, shimmying my robe off of my shoulders in the process. Once I had the outfit on, I turned so I was facing the mirror. My eyes widened. Luca would not like the outfit, which is exactly why I would wear it. The skirt landed a few inches above my knees, but I didn't mind it. In fact, I found it quite endearing. What I found more endearing, though, was the way the blazer would cover up my breast fairly well, but also showed their outlines so beautifully that it didn't look cheap in any way. It looked just right. A pair of black strap heels would look dazzling with that outfit. Laura's voice evoked a flinch out of me. 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐠'𝐬. I gulped. You're not mad that I'm wearing this. Laura shook her head at me. I got that as a gift from the Luna of the South. Though I don't like wearing things that aren't made by me. You know what they say. Don't eat anything you didn't kill. She walked up to me and adjusted the shoulder of the blazer. Everything in that closet was never worn, and I never plan on wearing it either. Take it. I choked on my spit. I saw the way you looked at everything in there. I would never look at anything in that closet that way, so take it. Laura swatted my breast and I hissed. Ouch. You're spending too much time with me, I said, rubbing the area right under my rib. She cackled, slapping her knee. I'm glad. If there's one person I want to act like in this castle, it's you. Nobody had ever said that to me. You know, I began. I could say the exact same thing to you. Laura smiled brightly before sliding her arm through mine. My shoes are special to me, so I keep them in my workspace. Let's go. The lunch with the 4 packs is in a few hours. I was pulled by Laura out of her room and down the hallway that led to her office. What lunch? What are you talking about? I asked. Luca was supposed to tell you, but he didn't know your heat would be yesterday. Don't worry though, you have an hour and a half left to prepare. Shouldn't I wake Luca up? Hamza is on his way to prepare him. Don't worry. A love pain rushed through my wrist as Laura and I walked down the stairs arm in arm. I winced. Laura's eyes shifted to my wrist and she gasped. When I heard a crack, I didn't know it would be that bad. It's bad, I said. But his wolf took over. I could tell. Does that mean you're on good terms now? I shook my head. Not at all. But it does mean that I can give him a hard time and he can't do anything about it. Until I say so. At least. I have a few bandages in my office. We could use that. Find you your heals and get you to the infirmary as soon as we do so. She pushed the door open and sat me down on her couch. Oh, and you best give him a hard time for at least 2 weeks. I heard my granny say that Maylauf's breaking points are between 1 week and 14 days. He has a grandma, goddess. There was another member of the Belusi family I had to impress. What's his grandma like? I asked. Laura sat in front of me and wrapped my wrist in bandages as she spoke. Well, just nothing like his mother. That's for sure. She hates the Luna with an impatience as her son should have never made her queen and that she would be the fall of our family. Leela grunted as she tied a knot, which I don't disagree with. She's embarrassing and cannot keep her mouth shut. Shall love you. And I am a firm believer in that. She went to the outskirts and only lasted 2 weeks, but that was to prove to her mate our previous king. But she was worthy. I let out a breath. Wow, she went in there willingly. Indeed she did. She patted my wrist before standing up to get the black heels. You'll meet her today. At the lunch. What? It was bad enough my muscles felt like they were pulled out of me and sawn right back in. And now, I had to meet the royal family SX, Luna. How would I meet her expectations of what her grandson's wife should look like? Surely she would choose the Western princess over me. I was certain of it. Just the thought of having to converse with people I didn't know. Speak of my past and why I was worthy enough to be protecting the king of all wolves brought a frown to my face and a slump to my shoulders. Laura patted my back. Turned that frown upside down. Look what I've got in hand. She held up a pair of black heels. They're gorgeous, aren't they? Never did I think a pair of black pumps would take my breath away. Yet there I set a pair of black pumps floating in front of me with my jaw slacked. Put them on, will you? Laura ushered. It was only when I put them on that I realized their bottoms were coated a stunning burgundy red. Just the feel of them was fascinating and made me feel a tad bit more powerful than when I wore my armor. I stood up with the help of Laura and stared at the mirror. Honestly, I looked fabulous. Not fabulous enough to lighten up my mood though. You're missing something. Put these on. She handed me a pair of pearl earrings and a golden chain bracelet. There we go. Now Luca is going to regret ever laying a finger on you. I hope so, I hope so. Suddenly, 𝐊𝐢 barged into the room, a hand held to her heart. Mrs. Lara, the Alpha requests your immediate presence. My heart fell out of my bum. I would have to walk to the infirmary alone then. H is probably panicking because he woke up and didn't find you there. I'd better get going then. 𝐊𝐢, walk Leela to the infirmary, please. She needs to get her wrist checked out. Lara grabbed a dress from her racks of clothing. Meet me by the fountain. Leela, I nodded and waved her goodbye, acting as though I knew exactly where the fountain was. Let's get going then. 𝐊𝐢 and I began walking to the infirmary. How have your days been? I haven't seen you in a while. I pointed out. It was true. It had been almost 2 days since I'd last seen her, and she was supposed to be my personal maid. While I didn't support her title one bit, I also found it a bit odd that she was rarely beside me or at my command. Penelope, Lara's maid, seemed to be fairly close to her considering she had access to her home and all. Oh, just the usual. I still have my job at the kitchens and down by the gardens, both which I thoroughly enjoy, though I haven't been able to focus much on you judging by your wrist. She sighed. How did it happen? My heart faltered for a second. Should I tell her? If I told her, I would risk being the main topic of maid gossiping that was if she participated in it. She seemed sweet. 𝐊𝐢, 𝐊𝐢. But my wolf was always a bit jumpy around her, so I resisted pouring my heart out to her. I fell in the shower. Silly me. I winced at the way I addressed the topic but let it slide. That bruise seems much worse than a shower fall. Leela, has somebody quarreled with you? I gulped and shook my head. No, don't worry about it. Tell me about your time at the kitchens. I'd imagine it's hectic down there. She nodded, smiling. Sometimes I hate it. But really, it's the only place I feel at peace. The noise makes me forget everything wrong in this castle. She faced me as we began walking down the stairs. What about you? How was the ball? I heard you danced with the Alpha. Damn it. Change the subject. Leela. It was nice, but something really bothered me. I saw an old woman there, one that ran away just as midnight hit. She seemed familiar. With her eyes. I said, I would like you to find out who she was, or if she was on the guest list, because I find it quite odd that the only old lady in the ball happened to leave before everyone else. 𝐊𝐢 less jaw tick before she nodded. All right. You'll have the answer by tonight. Will you be at your room? Because I didn't find you there last night. I most probably will be. Great. We've arrived. Please take a seat here. You'll contact the doctor. 𝐊𝐢 scurried away to find the doctor as I took a seat and waited. The walls were painted a blinding white and the floors were a dark oak, making the sound of my heels loud and demanding. It was a large infirmary, so I cowled and imagined just how large the hospital may have been. Though one thing I didn't like was how it seemed like one long hallway with no windows. Just as I was about to stand up, a tall man the age of 40 came into my line of vision wearing a medical coat. Please, follow me. I followed him into his room and sat onto the examining table. What seems to be the problem? I fractured my wrist. I'd just like you to bandage it for me. Please. His aura demanded submission and he seethed with anger. I didn't know why, but I didn't like it. If I may ask, what is your name? I asked. He looked up at me as he removed the bandages Lara had wrapped around my wrist. Dr. Bowden Salvador. Address me as Dr. Salvador. No wonder he was mad. I was the reason his son had lost his job. Just as images of his son came into my head, Roman walked into the room wearing a medical coat similar to his father's. Listen, he'll just check on my daisies and be right back. Father, I don't know if they're able enough to. He paused as his eyes landed on me. Leela, you will address her as royal guard. Roman? My eyes shifted to the doctor's. I'd rather he refer to me by my first name. Dr. Salvador. I heard you quarreled with the Alpha, but the beta's female ushered us all inside before we could get a good look. I'm guessing that's why you're here. Roman handed his father a gauze and disinfectant. That looks bad. It's going to take 2 days to heal. I don't know why you spend your days surrounded by flowers when you're excellent at the art of biology. His father tuddy. Art heals the world. Father. Science does. Gimlet. Roman laughed at his father's insult and the sight my heart squeeze. Their bond made me miss Layman. And father. And mother. I apologize for the loss of your job. You'll have it by today. I've spoken to the Alpha. It was a minor misunderstanding. I said as Roman pulled out a burgundy velvet glove. What's that for? No royal guard should appear injured in front of other packs. Plus, it's in trend these days. The Western woman will be wearing them. Might as well catch them off guard. Roman handed me the gloves as his father finished off my wrist. Put them on. I did as he told and smiled. They looked great on my hands and covered the bandages perfectly. Can't believe you fought our king and only ended up with a fractured wrist. Roman's tone was giddy. Trust me when I say this. I beat him during our first fight in this fight. That's why 𝐻ES in hiding. Might as well take the piss while I can. Right? Dr. Salvador looked down at his smiling son, his eyes shining with affection before they turned to me and turned cold. It was better than before when he was angry. I don't know whether to thank you or curse you for taking him away from my assistance. I wouldn't mind either. Dr. Salvador, I said. He shook his head at my answer before patting my wrist. You're all set to go. The pack lunch is starting in half an hour, so you better get going. I nodded at him and got off the table. Thank you. And again, I apologize for the inconvenience with your son. The doctor whispered so only I could hear. It's all right. He shouldn't have approached a mated woman in the first place. I was taken aback. How did you know? When planning the ball. The king spoke of the royal guard with a sweetness to his voice. Don't worry though. Only I noticed. The man reminded me of myself when I found my woman. Oh, I was shocked, but also impressed at the way he analyzed the Alpha. Well, 𝐿 thank you again. Really, I appreciate it. Run along now. We don't want our guard to be late. I just have to ask Roman a few questions and he'll be off, I said, catching the flower boy's attention. He removed his surgical gloves and approached me. A brow raised. Is anything of the matter? Yes, actually. I need to know if anyone above the age of 120 was invited to the ball and what the lowest 𝐊𝐢𝐻 in that room was. I figured since you were responsible for planning the event you would know. I said, oh yes. I know the name of everybody in that room. His tone was prideful. To answer your question, no. Nobody in that room was above the age of 60. Anybody with a status lower than guard was not allowed, excluding the maids, of course. Commoners are forbidden from entering the castle. Why do you ask? So I'm not crazy. I think we have an intruder. But please, keep this between us. I warned. I can promise you nobody for an entered the ballroom. 60 years ago a witch casted an enchantment on that specific room that forbade anybody whose name was not on the list from entering it. What would happen if they did enter it? Throughout the night, their wolf would try and take over. The uninvited Lycan would find that their wolf was acting up, and by midnight, they will completely transform and not cease until they've murdered 3 other wolves. And this goes for all species. What if it were a witch? I asked. Then the witch would find it difficult to resist her magic and not cease until she's murdered 3 guards after midnight passed. Okay then, I muttered. I best get going now. Remember, not a word of this to anyone. He nodded. Farewell. Guard, you have my word. I smiled at him and bid both the doctor and Roman my farewells. They were good people. Very attractive good people. I made my way to the fountain by asking one to many maids where it was because 𝐊𝐢𝐬 was nowhere to be found after my trip to the infirmary. It annoyed me that she was so at ease with the job, even made me feel like I was too nice. But I also didn't want to stoop down to the Luna's level of demanding. Laura sat at the edge of the fountain, picking at her nails. She wore an emerald green silk dress that complemented her red hair, beautifully accompanied with an array of gold jewelry. I tapped her shoulder. Boo. She flinched and held on to the edge of the fountain. A heart held to her hand. Leela, what if I fell into the water? That was the point. I will forever mourn the fact that you didn't. Ugh, you infuriate me. Take this and put it on before we go into the main garden. She handed me two boxes which I opened. One consisted of a golden floral headband and the other a golden metal bracelet that seemed too large for my wrist and too loose for my neck. You're supposed to put this on your thigh. Brings extra attention to your legs. Lara clarified. My lips parted in shock, but my veins rushed with excitement. I'd never heard of a bracelet for my thigh, but I definitely was opposed to the idea. So I put it on and stared at my reflection in the window. The headband and the thigh bracelet were the cherries on top to the entire outfit. Fab, LUS. Let's go then. Shall we? Lara said. We shall. The glass doors flew open and we walked out of the castle and into the main garden. It was beautiful, an array of rivers, trees and littered with hundreds of different flowers. A circular table laid in the middle of the garden covered in white cloth and golden utensils, and I was amazed. A cobblestone rail helped us walk with our heels, so I was still able to look professional. Lucas' scent flooded through my nostrils as he came into my line of vision. He was wearing a red suit, one that coincidentally went well with mine, and I wondered if he had seen me change. Our eyes connected. It didn't stay on mine for long. Rather, they went down the length of my body and stayed where my thigh lay jeweled. His hands clenched around his glass of wine, and I saw him excuse himself from speaking to the alpha before he strode to my direction. Lara patted my arm and laid a small kiss to my cheek. This is where I leave. Love. I blushed and ushered her away. He stopped in front of me, body strained. You look beautiful. So I've heard. I said. Are the gloves because of me? His eyes softened. I really am sorry. Leela, I know. I began. Roman gave them to me. His eyes shone a bright amber, and before he could speak, I interrupted him. Speaking of Roman, I remember asking you to give him his job back. He stretched his neck, jealousy radiating off of him in waves. Noted. He'll receive a letter by tonight saying 𝐊𝐲𝐶 allowed back into the greenhouse. Good. I smiled and gently took his glass of wine in my gloved fingers. Now I know this question may seem out of the blue, but what do you think of Western women? They're all right. Not my taste, though. My brows rose. What would you say your taste is? Why are you asking? Research purposes. I took a sip of the horrible wine and his eyes landed on my lips. Now answer the question. What was the question again? What would you say your taste in women is? I repeated you. Ice coughed. That's not a proper answer. You're supposed to be giving me facial features you prefer. Characteristics you want in your future wife. He laughed. Head falling backwards, neck all bare for me to see. The urge to press my lips to his skin was strong, but I resisted it because I had pride that ran for miles. The pride I would let anyone, including myself, break. I like skin the color of caramel. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. Hair the color of chocolate, a woman with striking features. Soft faces don't do it for me. So you're saying you prefer a woman with a nose the shape of a hook than a slope. That's exactly what I'm saying. Oh, my lips parted and his eyes cowled and helped but land on them again. I took my lower lip in my teeth before taking another sip of his champagne. Okay, now you're doing this on purpose. He spoke under his breath. Doing what? He clenched his jaw, frustrated. Goddess, who knew this could be so fun? Continue answering the question. Please. I protested. I want a woman that looks exactly like you. A wife that acts exactly like you. A female with a scent identical to yours. He let out a short breath. I want you. Not some Western woman. Damn it. Why are you asking anyway? Like I said, research purposes. I tried to put up a femme fatale look, but I sensed my face heat up so fiercely it felt like I was burning up. Are you not going to say I look good? He asked. No, his face fell. Why not? It'll tell you you look good when you deserve to hear it. What do you want me to do, Leela? I swear, I'll do anything if it means you forgive me. Desperation costed his masculine face. It was my wolf, not I, in punishing him for his actions by silencing him. But Leela, you have to understand that he is not a normal alpha. He is the alpha of all alphas. When he hears you say, if I was mated to Luca, I would have fancied him a 𝐊𝐲 bound to go insane. 𝐖𝐨𝐥𝐼𝐻. He could hear my thoughts, but I was sure I had put my wall up. Not only that, but he remembered what I had said word for word. Didn't miss a single beat, comma, nor pause. And I felt bad because if he thought that about another female, I would have been more than angered. How could you hear my thoughts? When you kiss me, our bond strengthened. It gave me more access to your brain than you think. Oh, I felt humiliated that he heard such a thing. He took my gloved hand in his and looked mine in the eye. I can't train you to make your wall more powerful than even my own. I just need you to promise me. I don't remember the last royal guard and king being this close. The Luna interrupted, eyes furious. Remember, God, your testing has not ended. I curtsy. Luna, apologies. I was asking her where she got her gloves. Calm down, Luca said. Anyway, Luca, meet Princess Nicole Barber of the West. She's come all the way from the mainland to visit you. The Luna introduced the platinum-haired woman by her side. A wide smile painted across her face. Greetings, Princess of the West. I hope you've enjoyed your stay at the castle. Luca spoke in a monotonous voice. The princess was a poster beauty. A nose the width of my pinky, lips mimicking the density of pillows in a heart-shaped face. Her hair shone a bright white under the sunlight, and her eyes were indeed the color of the sea. I gulped. Eat my royal guard. Leela hatted. Woman of the North. Luca placed his hand in the small of my back and pushed me forward. She scored a full mark in the trails. The first Lycan to ever do so. Nicole smiled sweetly and nodded. How nice. You know, I was trained by the King of the West. My father. Best fighter to ever exist. Yeah, I doubt that. Luca smiled as my thoughts seeped into his brain, pursing his lips to stop himself from laughing. How nice. Leela here was trained and survived in the outskirts for 6 years. Maybe we could see you battle one day instead of the usual male quarrel, Luca suggested. Oh, I don't know about that. I would love to, I said, my answer contrasting greatly to hers. The Luna eyed me, her jaw clenched, before softening her face and smiling to the princess. Oh, don't fret, darling. Your father is known for his craft. I'm sure you could take on a guard. The royal guard, Luca corrected, his arm unknowingly wrapping around my waist. Nicole's eyes shifted from the Luna to his hand and her nostrils flared. I was just glad Luca was taking my side. If it weren't for Laura's word of motivation, I would have probably forgiven him by then. But I didn't. I promised myself I would not lay my lips on his until 14 days had passed and that promise would be fulfilled. It would teach Luca that I was to be messed with, and it would teach me that my heart was not to be played with. It may even teach his damned wolf to control itself. Well, let's eat then, Luca suggested. Where will I be seated? Alpha, I asked. His eyes sparkled with trouble as he took out a chair beside his own. Right here. I sat down on his extended chair, surrounded by the leaders of my generation. The West, the East, the South, and the North. Slayman was also sat beside me, a coincidence I really appreciated. The princess was sat right in front of me, and I was glad the table was circular, because if it weren't I would lent if she grabbed the blunt knife beside her and stabbed at my forehead. Luca's authoritative voice distracted me of that thought. Today we are united to discuss political and personal matters between all 4 packs. We will proceed with this order. North, East, South, and West. You will each have 8 minutes to speak. The North may begin. Luca sat down once he finished with his speech. For some odd reason, the sight of him made my body clench uncomfortably. Slayman stood up and began speaking from beside me. Evening. Leaders. The Alpha of the North cannot be present today for reasons only accessible to Northerners themselves. He would like you all to know that the North is rising and that it is rising quickly. The war has done nothing but make us more potent. His eyes landed on the Luna, who lowered her face. While we do not know who is responsible for the war, we are positive it is not one of us. We are also sure that the East and South have nothing to do with the attack. Are you suggesting it was us? Nicole spoke with her nose up. Is a Northerner really questioning our innocence? You were not given permission to speak. Nicole. Sit. Lucas stared her down. Continue. Beta slay man. As I was saying, with the permission of the king, we would like to test every leader to ensure that nobody in this room is responsible for the 18-0 death caused by the war. I do not approve of this. The Luna dropped her fork as she spoke. Before Luca placed a hand on my thigh under the table and squeezed. I do. When would you like to conduct these tests? I squirmed as he rubbed circles on my thigh. Well, have the equipment in 2 days. 𝐨𝐸 looked down at me. A witch will be present and will question every leader seated at this table. That was his way of telling me we didn't have 7 days to get the witch. And I agreed. Does anyone object? Luca asked, sliding his fingers higher up my thighs. Nay, said the Easterners. Nay, the Southerners. Nichols' side of the table remained awfully silent. Alpha of the West. Do you object? Luca asked, his grip on my thigh rising even further. I crossed my legs over each other's, trapping his hand in between my skin and from going any further. 14 days hadn't passed. Nay, said the Western Alpha. It was at that moment that a certain smell rushed up my nostrils. Ash. Rotten, vile. It reminded me greatly of the outskirts. No. It reminded me exactly of the outskirts. A shiver ran down my spine at the thought of that wretched place. The smell disappeared as fast as it came, and suddenly, Dalo was beside placing a plate of food in front of me. I rubbed my eyes and looked up again. Where did that smell come from? Maybe it was one of the maids placing the food on the table, but I doubted it. None of them fit the outskirt land's persona. I have completed your assignment. Leela, finding out who that old woman was. Dalo whispered, mixing my saladant. I asked, brows risen and surprised because Roman said there was no old woman. She was some commoner that snuck into the castle in hopes of finding a male for her daughter. I'm certain of it. Seems like we had ourselves a problem. And sadly, that problem was Lucas' hand stuck in between my thighs. Chapter 17. It was the next day. I had spent all of yesterday trying to pinpoint which one of my acquaintances had lied about the honey-eyed woman, and I hadn't come to a conclusion, or at least one that made sense. As I sat in my room dressed in nothing but shorts and a large shirt, I thought about 𝐨𝐸 speech and how he said we had to question the leaders of their intentions. It confused me because we both knew that the royal family were responsible for Mother's death and the destruction of our pack. Maybe he was trying to prove to the Southern and Eastern leaders that the Westerners and royals were not to be trusted. It made sense because the prophecy said to Northerners would ruin the Belusi family name. What didn't make sense, though, were my nightmares and that honey-eyed woman. A knock sounded from my door and I stood up to open it. Deep inside, I hoped it was Luca. The lack of skin-to-skin contact was driving me mad, and it had only been 2 days. But I had to go on for longer. 2 weeks to be exact. I pulled the door open and 𝐨𝐸's stone face came to my vision. 𝐨𝐸, come in, please, I said, a smile coming onto my lips. It had been a while since we had a proper conversation, one where we weren't at each other's throats. As soon as he sat down at the couch, he began speaking in that tone of his. I'm sure you got my message. We don't have 7 days to get that witch. We need to go tonight so we can interrogate the royal family and bring the leaders on our side. Good morning to you two. Brother, I mumbled, annoyed. Ready yourself so we can leave this afternoon. He got ready to stand up, but I caught his arm, stopping him. What's wrong? 𝐨𝐸, 6 years go by and you're not the least bit excited to see me. What happened? My lips spoke faster than my mind thought. Let me remind you that the prophecy said an Northerner's heart will stop. It's best we not get on good terms and make everything easier for us if things go sour. 𝐿𝐲 furrowed his brows at me. What? Did you expect me to be all artsy again? Surrounded by my paints? Yeah, I did. I clarified. Well, you thought wrong. Meet me at the training grounds at 2 p.m. The ride to the outskirts will take 6 hours, and we need all the time we can get. He pulled his arm out of my hold and sent me a curt nod. See you then. Baffled, I watched silently as he left my room and closed the door behind him. The sound of the locks clicking left me feeling hollow a hollow which I hadn't felt in days, considering I thought everything was going to go back to normal. Why in the world would I think that? He lost his child and his mother. Who was I compared to that? You're such an idiot. 𝐿𝐲, I whispered to myself. Why would you say that? Lucas' voice came from behind me, forcing me to halt my movements. If it's that exchange with your brother, you're not stupid. But if it's because you're going to the outskirts again, willingly, then yes, you are. I stood up from the couch and faced him in all his glory, horror painted across my face. I can explain. What in the world is a worthy enough explanation to the stupidity you're about to endure if you go through with this? He was furious, eyes bulging out of his sockets. There's a reason for this. Trust me. I just need to get something from there and I'll ask someone to get it for you. 𝐿𝐲, why does it have to be you? Because I know where it is. Well, I'm sure we can explain what that thing looks like. It just does. Luca, I burst, hands clenched by my sides and foot stomping. You don't need to know why, and I was never asking for your permission in the first place. You are my guard. 𝐿𝐲, you really think you can just leave? My breath faltered as I stared him down. You're really going to banish me from my position? I asked, walking so I was a few steps away from him. I'd like to see you try. His eyes turned amber as he stepped forward and into my space. You wrapped his hand around the back of my neck. Or not. He pulled me to him so that my lips were inches away from his. Leaving. I placed my palm on his chest and pushed him away from me, dizzy at the lack of his warmth pushing into my presence. It took everything in me to stop myself from laying my lips to his, but I did it. I controlled myself. And I was impressed by my ability. I'm going to put my armor on. I let out a breath. And meet my brother by the training grounds. You're going to leave and stop acting like you're my father. I'm not acting like your father. You are. Luca. Just can't see it. I was so frustrated with his behavior so much that I hated the fact that I was mated to a king. He was suave, charming, and a gentleman at heart. But he was also overbearing, possessive, sensitive at times, and just a tad bit too stunning. It was a lot to handle. Some might say it was worse than being trapped in the outskirts for 6 years, but who was I to speak? Some 18-year-old girl who couldn't control her emotions from overcoming her body. Who was I kidding? That's exactly where I was. Let me come with you, he suggested. Well, fine, whatever you're looking for quicker. I'm not risking it. We fight with the same skill, but you suck at 𝐿𝐲. Luca, have you ever slayed a 6-headed beast the size of that door? I pointed to my door, brows risen. No, Luca, you haven't, and I'm not risking losing you to that. 𝐿𝐲 has never been to the outskirts either. 𝐿𝐲, his eyes shone with desperation, an emotion that made my heart squeeze painfully and my wolf howl like a banshee in my head. When did emotions become such a big thing to me? Please, 𝐿𝐲, I just found you 9 days ago, and listen. I know I might not be what you expected, but I'm trying. I really am. He sighed, equally as frustrated as I was. My wolf screams at me to mark you with every second that passes, and I have to push him down, and it gets harder every day. He's never been this way though, so I don't. He was rambling just as much as he was shaking, and the sight did something to me. I laid my hand on his shoulder and looked him in the eyes. The whole world paused as I stared into the turmoil of his sea orbs at the complete and utter panic that lay beneath them. His little pearls of blue were moving rapidly as they stared into my own, trying to convince me to not leave. Let's sit down. I cupped his face in my hands. Okay, let's just sit and talk. He followed me to the couch and sat down, his body stiff. "You're not going to die in the outskirts, Luca. I've slain practically every monster that's ever existed." I laid my hand on his, squeezing. "I promise you. It feels like you're slipping away from me, Leela." He ran a hand through his hair. "I sound like a whiny pup." "You don't," I whispered, scooting closer to him till my thigh rubbed against his. "You sound like a male who wants his female." "I do want you, and I am trying to run at your own pace, but it's hard." "I know." I completed his sentence. "I'm not going to say I understand what you're saying because, frankly enough, I don't. But I am here for you. I am yours and nobody else's." His body relaxed at those words and his arm wrapped around my shoulders, instinctively forcing an array of sparks to rush through my body. "I could kiss you right now," he mumbled, "and I wouldn't allow it," I said, tracing circles onto his chest. "I deserve that." "You do. Did I mention I was sorry?" He laid a kiss on my forehead, ushering a swarm of butterflies to flutter in my stomach because I am. Suddenly, a thought popped into my head. "Remember yesterday? You said you would do anything for me to forgive you," I asked, staring at him. He nodded. "Yeah. Well, I know what I want." "What is it?" "I want you to trust me, Luca. Trust that I will come back from the untamed lands, all in one piece, with what I need in my arms. If you let me go wherever I want for the next 48 hours, I will forgive you." I spoke genuinely, with passion and sincerity because I meant it. If he was able to trust me for the next 48 hours, unknowing of what I was about to do, it meant he was worth it. It meant that he was controlling his beast and letting go of his insecurity. He chuckled and played with the tips of my fingers, shaking his head. "You could have asked me for this entire castle, Leela, and, to be honest, I would have given it to you. But instead, you asked me for 48 hours. He sighed longingly. "To be honest, that sounds like a hell of a lot more than a castle." I giggled into his chest, the sound alien to my lips. "He'll give you 48 hours, he murmured. "Anything more than that and he'll send the entire kingdom out looking for you." Please don't. You asked for 48 hours and I gave them to you." I rolled my eyes. "You're such an alpha." He laughed, the morning sun kissing his smooth skin. "An alpha you will one day grow to love." I paused at the mention of that word. Love. I knew for a fact I didn't love Luca just yet, but I fancied him. I liked him so much I couldn't see myself with anyone other than him, and maybe that was because Luca was the first man to ever call me beautiful. Maybe it was because he was the only man to ever lessen the hollowness in my chest, but I didn't want to question it. He was him and I liked that. A lot. An alpha I will one day grow to love. Indeed, I repeated, a content smile on my face. I got into my armor just as the 2 o'clock sun glazed my skin, much to Luca's protest. It felt like a cocoon, protecting me from all the evil that resided both within the castle and outside of it. The armor made me forget about the gorgeous gown I wore to the ball and the promiscuous burgundy velvet outfit I sported yesterday. It made me forget about the beauty and remember why I was there in the first place. For Mother, for the prophecy. It also made me feel grateful for Lara and Luca because without them, I would have been trapped in the 𝐿𝐻𝐾RTS for many more days to come with no warm armor holding on to me. I walked out of my bathroom and into the living room where Luca sat. A plate of fruits I cut up in front of him. "It's been a while since I've seen you in that," he said, eyes impressed. "Which do you prefer? The gown?" Or I gestured to myself. "This. I'd prefer anything with you in it." He walked up to me and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "Can I please kiss you?" 13 more days. 13 more days. 13 more days. Not on my lips. "No," I said. "I just need my skin to be on yours." He whispered before sliding my hair over my shoulders and laying a kiss on my neck. I bit my lip to stop myself from making a sound the warmth and tickle his lips provided too much. Every fiber in my body demanded his lips to be on my own, but I cowed and I was too prideful. He pulled me to him from the small of my back, forcing my chest to lay flush against his. I had to hold onto his shoulder to stay upright. "Stop resisting," he whispered. "What?" He sucked on the skin of my neck, eliciting the deepest of moans from my throat. "There we go," he grunted. I felt his girth poke at the base of my stomach and clenched my thighs together. Excited. He was big, every bit of him his shoulders, his hands, his thighs and arms. And I loved it. The way his body held onto mine. My hands without clothes underneath the sheer cloth of his shirt and wrapped around his sculpted waist, evoking a groan out of him. Goddess. I was about to meet my brother. This was the opposite of what I should have been doing. At the thought of 𝐨𝐸man's face, I pulled away immediately disgusted. I have to go. Luca. I stuttered, unraveling my hands from his waist. He breathed out a growl, both hands holding me at my elbows. His eyes were that bright amber which meant one thing, that his wolf was desperate to reach out to me, and honestly, I didn't like his beast very much at the time. "What's your wolf's name?" I asked. Luke, can I speak to him?" "Are you sure?" Luca rose his brows. "I sense he wants to meet me, so why not?" "Yes, Mum." Luca took a step away from me and shifted into his wolf with ease as though he'd done it 1,000 times before. It amazed me how I didn't even hear a crack sizzle through the air, and I made a mental note in my head to ask him how he did it, but all thoughts flew out of my head when I saw Luke. A 6-foot black wolf baring its teeth at me. Holy shit. I stumbled backwards, back colliding with the edge of my counter at the sight of him. He was the largest wolf I had ever seen, with arms wider than boulders and ire. The mere size of him unsettled me. He without clothes towards me and sniffed at my boots. Luke. My voice shook. I would like, to say something before I leave for my mission. Luke snarled at the idea of me leaving, and I flinched, digging my back deeper into the counter. Somehow, his wolf reminded me of a beast I slain 3 years ago. And that terrified me. That this side of Luca, or any side of him for that matter, had any connection with my past. It made me desperate to leave the room and run back to 𝐨𝐸man's cold stare and brooding body. But I knew I couldn't. "Luca," I began, breath shaky with my mail. "I feel singular. I feel all and protected and passionate with feelings I never knew existed in my body. But with you, Luke, I gulped and lowered my eyes. I feel fear so strong I want to run away and not come back. Fear that reminds me of my past and my monsters." Luke padded towards me, but I held my palm out to him, stopping him. His ears lowered and his head tilted. "When I come back in 2 days, I hope to see your attitude towards me has changed." I mumbled, unable to look him in the eye. "I also hope my wrist heals in time." Luke brought his snout to my injured wrist, but I snatched it away from him, surprising the black wolf. "If anything goes wrong, it's not because I don't have enough skill. It's because my impeccable skill has to be accompanied by this injury, the one you caused." I slid away from the counter. "Goodbye, Luca. I'll miss you." His wolf whimpered because I didn't bid him my farewells, but it had to be done. Luke had to learn. I left my room with a slump in my shoulders and a dirty rag sitting atop my heart. For reasons odd, I thought I would have felt better speaking to Lucas Wolf. I thought that scolding him would have brought up my mood, but it didn't. In fact, it did the opposite. His wolf's big blue eyes and what snout brought feelings I didn't quite understand into the equation. As I walked to the training grounds, a feeling of nostalgia suddenly hit me. The training grounds were the first section of the castle I entered. It was the place I beat 46 high-blooded males, and in the place I was recruited to be the royal guard in. It was also the day I met the northern brute and Luca. Those rush of memories made me forget that I was about to go into the outskirts. They made the weight of the 2 swords strapped to my back lessen and my fear dissipate. I pushed the training grounds door open and spotted my brother speaking with the castle trainer. "And that is exactly why you're much better off with leather armor, not chains like these. Though I do admit, leather armor is much more pleasing to the eye than leather. It adds that special UMPH." The trainer paused as his eyes landed on me. "Royal Guard. Surprised to see you lasted 8 days in this castle. Am just as surprised as you are. Sir, I sent him a fake smile before turning to my brother. Are we ready to go? 𝐶𝐬 nodded at me, eyes faltering for the smallest of seconds as they landed on my neck. I see you've been busy. Darn it. I brought my hair to cover my exposed skin and sent 𝐶𝐬 a glare. Mind your own business. Let's just leave. His jaw ticked. Fine. The horses are just outside. Reports state that it may rain tonight, so the journey may take longer than usual. Whatever. Farewell. Beta 𝐶𝐬 and Royal Guard. The trainer nodded at me before turning around and assessing the weaponry cabinet. It was going to be a long trip. I just hoped there was going to be no blizzard. Chapter 18. A blizzard hit us, one so strong it bent the mountains and cracked open the stone grounds. The only thing that remained protecting us from the boulders of ice falling from the sky were the ancient trees and their thick leaves, and for once, I was grateful for the powerful shade they provided. I was grateful to be shrouded in darkness and flora. The horses were determined, though. They continued running through the woods so much that my thighs ached from their constant movement, but I didn't mind. In fact, I respected them for it. I sat on the horse's back, all 59 of me, for a total of 9 hours, and they didn't complain or push me off of them even once. That was also the day I decided that my spirit animal was the horse, constantly running without care nor plan. A follower of leaders, ready to accept my next mission regardless of my own health or tire. It was supposed to be a 6-hour ride, but we arrived at the edge of the kingdom in 10 hours and a few minutes. We had to pass through the eastern border because their lands were closest to the edge, but they welcomed us with open arms. It made me envy their society and culture, even reminded me of the North in some ways, but I held that back. Maybe it was because Luca was occupying most parts of my mind, but it wasn't until I stood right at the edge of the kingdom that fear completely engulfed my entire body. We both jumped off our horses and bound them to the green grass. Of course, we left them enough food to last 3 full days. We cowed and risked their health depleting. There was no wall separating the outskirts from the kingdom. Rather, it was the color of the dirt in the skies. A harsh line that ran for thousands of miles was carved into the ground, separated the bright green grass of the east from the rotting purple soil of the untamed lands. If you stood miles away from it, you could stare through the outskirts, even catch the eye of the predator, but they couldn't catch you. Monsters couldn't live in our lands. We were too clean, too bright for their eyes. Remind me why they never built a border. 𝐶𝐬 asked, out of breath by the sight of the edge. Too expensive. I faced him with my brave face. And it's useless. It's not like the monsters there could survive a day on our lands. Speaking of the outskirts made me feel stronger in a way. It boosted confidence up my veins, because if there was one thing I knew well, it was monsters and darkness. I could spend days, months, years even talking about what lay beyond the regulated lands, but that wouldn't even describe the depths of the forbidden grounds, because every second that passed, some new creature was rising. Still, nobody wants to see this in front of them. 𝐶𝐬 mumbled, taking his sword out of his metal belt as though there was a monster in front of us already. I ignored his comment and rose my leg so was hovering over the dark purple soil, only to have him pull me away by the elbow. Are you insane? He hissed, eyes wide. We came here to find a witch. 𝐶𝐬, what do you mean, are you insane? I scoffed, pulling my arm away from his. He ran a hand down his face. What? I snarled, suddenly angry. Did he decide to care now? At least tell me what to expect. Expect everything. It came out as a demand, and I didn't know why I was being so aggressive all of a sudden. But it felt good. He looked taken aback but nodded anyway. You follow my lead and do everything I say. Even if what you're doing feels right. Don't do it unless I say so. I'm doing all of the fighting. I'm handling all of the blood. The plan slipped out of my lips like it was my mother tongue. The only thing you're irresponsible for is watching out for me and carrying the witch on our way back. How will we find our way back? We follow the moon until our feet touch green grass, I said, holding out my hand for him to hold. Ready. taking one last shaky breath. He nodded and put his hand in mine. Ready. And into the forbidden lands we stepped, hand in hand and hearts in our stomachs. As soon as both our feet landed on the purple soil, the world turned dark and our wolves came alert. In there, it was quieter than silence. In there, the trees were grim and skinny with leaves blacker than midnight. In there, my body felt small and weak. 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐷, is this night or day? 𝐶𝐬 asked. There is no night or day. There is only witching hour and feasting hour, which is, for 6 hours, the monsters can roam these grounds freely and feast on whoever ever they like. For the remaining 18 hours, they hide, the beasts and banished lichens that don't find shelter before 6 hours have passed fall prey to the witching hour. I took in a deep breath. When the witches come out. Great. So since there's no monsters around us, we are in the witching hour. No monster would stray near the edge. An arrow could easily puncture through their skull. Until we've walked deep enough, we won't know, I explained. If you let me talk to you on our way here, we would have been on our way. Whatever. He mumbled. Let's get going. My heart squeezed at his answer. The more we walked, the steeper the soil became, as though we were going down a hill. It got to the point where we began sliding down the mountain-like structure, struggling to stay upright until we finally landed on flat. 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐸 again. Panic rushed through my veins at the thought of us getting back out to fetch our horses. What if something was chasing us on our way back? How would we have gotten out with that pain of a hill? We stumbled back onto our feet and dusted our pants. Growls rang from the distance and crows began singing. There were deformed birds flying freely above me and the trees swayed like there was no tomorrow. This is the feasting hour, I whispered. Get rid of your chains. What, why? They make too much noise. We won't find a witch if you keep them on. 𝐶𝐻's going to find us. I watched as he slowly removed his chain helmet, leaving him in his leather pants and metal torso. Now we can continue. We tiptoed forward, eyes focused and ears perked up. We heard howls and screams echo from all around us, and it was terrifying, to say the least, especially to 𝐶𝐬. He seemed well more than terrified with those wide eyes of his. He was about to speak, I could tell by the way his lips parted, but suddenly, the soil underneath us began to dent like I was stepping on a net. What the hell? I stomped onto the soil and it rippled. It didn't shake. No, it rippled, like mud in wet soil. I heard 𝐶𝐬 take a deep breath and shifted my eyes to his, pointing forward and now then go. He nodded obediently and took a few steps forward, jaw clenched. Silently, I dug my foot into that area soil with enough strength that it ripped open, forcing a gasp out of me, with confusion saturated in my veins. I slid my sword out of my back and placed it down the small hole I created and waited for a minute or two. Nothing happened. After a whopping 120 seconds, nothing happened. Relieved, I began pulling the sword out of the hole until something held onto it. I was startled, and judging by the way 𝐶𝐬 flinched backwards. He was too, but I didn't make a noise. Whatever was holding onto my sword then yanked my metal downwards so strongly that my entire arm flew into the hole. I cried out as my face smashed into the rotting dirt and immediately began pulling away. But whatever this creature was strong. Very strong. It wasped until 𝐶𝐬 wrapped his arms around my waist and began pulling me away from the hole that hope brewed in my chest that I would leave the forbidden lands with both of my arms. I made sure to keep a strong hold on my sword. That was the last thing I was losing in there. What the fuck is that? 𝐶𝐬 paused, noticing the black gunk that coated the shiny metal of my sword. I don't know it. 𝐶𝐬, now focus, I ushered, keeping my eyes on the slime. It was moving. The black slime was moving on the metal almost like it was trying to swallow it whole but struggling to get through the sharpness of the weapon. With all the force I could muster up, I pulled my sword to my chest and fell backwards with 𝐶𝐬. Nothing came out of the hole. It was just that my sword was covered in smelly, rotten black gunk that left a trail on the purple soil. 𝐊𝐢, look, 𝐶𝐬 warned. My eyes focused on the stained soil, and that's when I noticed that the ground was rising. My jaw fell to the ground as I watched the ground rip open slowly, as though it were paper being ripped apart. Something with slime for skin and the underground for its home was digging its way out from underneath us, and I didn't know what in the hell it was. Get up, slay man. We have to get as far from it as possible, I said and ran, pulling Slayman up with me. I felt the ground shake as Slayman and heard it break apart so strongly my heart flew out of my chest, but I didn't look back. I refused to turn around and face the beast until Slayman was out of the monster's line of vision. Not today, I thought. I'm not losing you today, brother. It wasn't until I found a tree large enough for Slayman to hide behind that I screamed, "Hide," and pushed him so strongly he rolled across the dirt and slammed into the tree. Better a broken news than a dead brother. As I ran, I slid my other sword out of my back, so I held both in my hands. Whatever this creature was, it was heavy and strong, so much that it rattled the earth with its every step and forced the trees to cower at its presence. I felt adrenaline completely replace the blood in my body. Goddess, I hadn't felt this way in so long. With speed like no other, I spun around and faced the beast. Both my swords hent of me for defense. A 10-foot-tall monster had black slime for skin that dripped to the ground like it was a candle melting at the presence of fire. It had no eyes, no nose, no ears, just a mouth. But it was huge, with a chest the size width of my bed and legs thicker than mountain stone. I took a deep breath. I was ready. I had to be. The beast stood 4 feet away from me and held out its hand. I watched in complete shock as a coil, like length of slime, extended from its finger until it was right in front of me, floating in all its feudal glory. It was assessing me, asking itself what I was, and I was doing the exact same. I didn't know where its heart laid, nor did I know where its brain was. I didn't know how long I would have had to fight him, but I knew I would fight him all day if it meant my brother would make it out alive. So I fought. I rose my sword to slice the length of slime the monster had forced out of its finger and towards it. It wanted to grab me by the neck, so I ducked and slid from underneath it. Heart in my throat. The monster spun around and screamed the 1,000 little girls, forcing my heart to fall out of my ass. What the hell was that? I plunged my sword into its leg and it fell down on one knee. His head faced mine and I took the chance, raising my foot and striking it so it hit his face, but I immediately regretted it. My foot didn't injure it. No, it just went through the monster's head like it was quicksand. With horror saturated on my face, I tried so hard to pull my leg out of its faceless head but couldn't. I physically fucking couldn't, so I adapted. With one foot stuck in a monster's head, I grabbed my sword and sliced off its arm. It screamed again and grabbed me by my risen leg, only to squeeze my thigh so tightly I felt my blood stop flowing. I cried out in agony and tried pulling my foot out of its face again but failed miserably. It was that exact moment that I remember why I feared the outskirts. The monster stood up from its kneeled position, picking me up with him. I was so caught off guard that I dropped one of my swords. The world was suddenly upside down and I was floating, using the sword in my hand. I blindly stabbed it into the monster's neck and twisted it in all sorts of positions, forcing the damned thing to stumble in pain and finally fall forward while I was still hanging upside down from its mouth. It was like time stopped. My head slammed into the ground as the beast crashed on top of me, completely diminishing my ability to breathe and cracking a rib or two of mine. I couldn't move an inch and the handle of my sword was digging painfully into my stomach, that, accompanied by the pathetically ambiguous amount of slime running down my body, made it all so unbearable. Luckily, my hand was still wrapped around my sword, so I did the only thing I could do. I dug the sword deeper into the monster's neck and spun it over, bearing slowly like I was taking my time to open a bottle of water. The monster screamed that blinding scream of his at the action and attempted pulling himself off the ground, giving me just enough space to roll from underneath him, leaving my sword in his body. Goddess, I couldn't breathe, nor could I stand up. The monster lay beside me on its front, trying to rise but failing just as much as it was trying. So I crawled towards the sword it dropped, completely forgetting the fact that my foot was still stuck in the beast's mouth. 𝐿𝐷𝐞𝐲. I stretched my body as much as I could till the tips of my fingers grazed the handle of my sword, but I still couldn't reach it. The monster was starting to rise. I could tell because my leg was as well. And I swear I was about to burst into a fit of pathetic tears because pathetic deep down that there was only one way I was going to escape my captor. By shifting. Nobody knew this. But it only ever shifted once in my life. I was 16 and alone, hiding in a shack I'd built for myself. It was excruciating. I had no adrenaline syringes. I had no warm baths to help me. I had nothing but me in my shack. So I endured every crack and every twist of my muscles raw and bare. And I never wanted to do so again. But at that moment, I had to. So I called for my wolf. I shouted like a banshee for her in my head, and she heard. She pulled at the rope I'd thrown down at her and took over my body, forcing an array of cracks and bends to take place, and somehow, so did my armor. Indeed, what Laura has crafted was wondrous. I dug my fingers into the dirt to stop myself from crying out, and I genuinely thought I was doing well handling the pain. But oh, I was so wrong. The last crack, the bending of my spine, that made me almost black out. But thankfully, I didn't. I screamed, but the sound that came out of my throat was very much the opposite. It was a growl, one so loud it forced a gush of wind to swivel through the trees. The monster rose on both of its feet, leaving me to hang from him. But since my wolf was taller than me, I could touch the ground with my paws. I sunk my claws into its own calves with such ferocity black liquid began pooling out of them. It fell on both its knees again, giving me access to the beast's 𝐊𝐷𝐞𝐬. Without a second thought, I bit into the area between the monster's legs so hard I felt a crunch between my fangs. My tongue also sensed a beating there, almost like a heart. Bingo. With my fangs still strapped to the monster's 𝐊𝐷𝐞𝐬, I pulled away, and in my mouth was quite literally its black heart. I spit it out. The monster fell forward one last time and died. It was no more. I shut my eyes and imagined my human form. It took a minute or two before I was fully back into my body, a minute of mine, bending pain I had to endure. But I did it, and I was still in my armor. Is it dead? 𝐶𝐬man's head peeked out from behind the tree, and I forgot he was ever there. I nodded silently. No voice left in me. That was all it took for him to rush by my side. Goddess. Leela. What the fuck was that? I was so exhausted I couldn't even shrug. I tried to stand up, but my left leg screamed in pain and my broken ribs protested against any movement. 𝐶𝐬man noticed but didn't say anything, just looked at me like I had just told him I had Alzheimer's. As I stared into his eyes, I could tell he felt bad that he couldn't help. I could tell he was shocked, but I could also tell he was scared. I'm going to need you to cut off that thing's head. I croaked, shifting my eyes to my leg that was ankle deep into the monster's head. Got it. He mumbled and got to work, slicing off the monster's head so that I wore it as a shoe. Why won't it get off? I shrugged. I don't know. Can you walk? I shook my head. I'll carry you then. 𝐶𝐬man ended as he said and lifted me off the ground and into his chest. You're going to capture the witch. Okay. I can't. I coughed out black lid and a searing pain rushed through my ribs. I can't do it. How will I do that? Fear was evident in his voice. All you need to do is puncture the back of her neck with the tip of your sword and she'll be at your command. I said, head leaning against my brother's chest. But make sure it's your sword. Got it. Now stop speaking unless you need to. You sound like a 600-year-old seer. 𝐶𝐬man smiled down at me for the first time in 6 years and my heart bloomed. He was happy. 2 hours had passed of us walking forward in silence and me being carried by my brother. 2 hours of me warning 𝐶𝐬man that a monster was nearby and him saying, but I didn't hear anything. Only to see that I was right 2 minutes later. I was grateful that he was there. Though, how the witch, though. Because 𝐶𝐬man was excellent at hiding. His footsteps. Goddess. Even I didn't hear them. And I was so impressed. I was also proud that such a worthy lichen was related to me. It wasn't until we saw a three-headed snake the size of a door crawling into the dirt that we knew something was off. It's the witching hour. Slay man, I warned. He halted in his steps. Where are the witches? They're not here yet. At least not the strong ones. My eyes spotted a large tree in the distance and I pointed to it. We best hide there until we sense the witches near us. All right. I let out a long breath and brought my knees to my chest. Unable to move any further. My wolf was sweet. Regardless of the fact that it had been 2 years since I'd last seen or spoken to her, she came to my aid when I called out. She didn't even think twice, and that single action made me feel so guilty for neglecting her. What are you thinking? 𝐿𝐴 asked out of the blue, face turning to face me. Nothing. Your face says otherwise. His jaw ticked. He always hated secrets, and I didn't blame him. I did too. Your wolf, he began. She wore armor. Leela, how did you do that? Laura's red hair rushed through my mind and I smiled. You should ask the beta's wife that. She made my armor. I don't know how. Though, as a witch though, it was a sight to see. Something out of a dream. 𝐿𝐴 shook his head in fascination. Really, I never expected you to fight a monster of that size. It was. Help. A voice rang out. It was a woman. It sounded so familiar. Almost like I'd heard it before. Leela, look. I followed 𝐿𝐴's eyes and spotted a dark-haired woman with green eyes limping from the distance. I could have sworn I'd seen her before. Give me your dagger. I demanded from 𝐿𝐴 and held my palm out. He did as he was told. With the help of the three behind me, I stood up. My eyes trained on the woman. She didn't seem like she was a witch. The lycans that were banished from any of the 4 packs would often turn rogue in here. Isolation did that to people. Please. I was wrongfully accused. My pack has gone through a war. Her eyes connected with mine. Green meeting green. And she let out a relieved breath. Finally, she began running towards us. Her dark hair flying in the wind and her facial features were hidden by the darkness. Stop right there. 𝐿𝐴 demanded once she was about 4 feet away from us. Where do you come from? The woman was young. I could tell by her veiny hands I come from the north. 6 years ago, my pack was attacked. She explained. I have a small cottage I built a few miles east. You could stay there as long as you like. Step into the light, I said, hiding my dagger behind my back. She did as told. And I swear to you I stopped breathing for a whole minute. What in the goddess's name? This can't be real. 𝐿𝐴's eyes shone as he faced me. He said you saw her die, Leela. A tear slipped from my eyes. I did. The dagger slipped from my fingers as I stared at the woman's eyes. I saw you die. In front of me stood Ferris hatted. My mother.